Hi, I'm John Sarakis with the Digital Mastermind. You're listening to The Climb. This is where agency owners and leaders tune in to get growth tips and strategies for growing their businesses. Buddy, thank you so much for joining us on this next episode of The Climb. This is episode 6, and the theme we are talking about today is women empowerment and mentoring, amongst a bunch of marketing things as usual. And before we get into that, I do have another important announcement to make. David McGraw has come out of podcasting retirement to join us again. It was a brief but small stay, and essentially he listened to the last episode and he couldn't take not hearing his voice. So David, thank you so much. How was your retirement?
Well, I mean, I'm sitting on the beach in Costa Rica listening to The Climb, and just there was something inside of me that said, I just have to come back for episode number 6. So I threw my beach towel to the side, got in the plane, came back, and I'm ready to go.
Hot damn, David, I'm honored. I'm honored to have you back. I can't say enough about it.
Good to be back.
But today it's a serious topic. We're talking about empowerment. So empowerment meaning this is where somebody was denied something before, right? So for instance, when it's women empowerment, I'm a guy. I'm a little bit nervous in talking about this because my experience with this is pretty limited being a guy and all, right? And biased, of course, because it's from my point of view, which I still think is an important point of view because it is mine. But the view I've had is from the women in my life, right? So friends, colleagues, my mother, my wife. And I've heard stories, like some of them not pleasant ones, but I've heard some good ones as well. And in that, my wife was in a management position, and I know there was like struggles that she had with certain what I would call is disempowering situations that I would try to coach her through. And some of those I think for the better. Now she's no longer employed at that place. But Dave, do you have any experiences? Granted, you're a guy as well. Let's be real. That you can share from others?
My wife, she runs a small business herself, and I think from my personal experience, I've probably heard every woman in the business world has experienced some sort of incident at all levels. I mean, I think it's pretty easy to find a story. I think, thankfully, I've never heard anything truly bad from Erica, but, I think more importantly is how many guys have you met that you just know are just complete jerks, and they probably treat women like dirt in business? I mean, those guys are so easy to pick out.
Yeah.
I mean, it brings me back to Cam from episode 2's comment where he's like, when we go to conferences and you meet that scumbag that's gonna try to talk to you, it's always a guy. And I was like, yeah.
It usually is. Yeah, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with the jerks, but maybe they'll just organically foster or flesh themselves out, so to speak, and it'll wash itself. Maybe it's education. I don't know, but I think there's a way that it can be fostered, women empowerment, and obviously you and I aren't experts in this in any way or any form, but the good news is we have somebody who's experienced with this. I don't want to set the bar too high as being an expert. I know she's a hell of a lot smarter than me. I want to go ahead and thank Shannon Prager for coming to the show. Shannon, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. And I feel honored that I've got Dave on my episode.
Out of retirement from the beaches of Costa Rica.
Back.
I feel like you came back just for me.
Yeah, it's a big episode, big topic.
That's the story I'm telling myself.
Perfect. I want to welcome you to the show. And before we get into everything, I'd like to give the listeners an overview of your climb. That's what we're calling the business profile now. That paints a picture essentially of what you've done to get to the position you are in now to have this conversation. So feel free to stop me if any of this stuff isn't accurate. Cool.
Okay.
From Dallas, Texas Tech grad. You interned at NASA, which I think is pretty cool. Worked for a handful of companies in corporate America as a marketing manager in director roles. You're a widely published B2B marketing expert online. And I mean, like through and through, you've been doing this for 27 years. And as the president of Lead It Marketing, you have a team of, according to LinkedIn, 13 team members, and you've owned and operated that since 2012.
Owned and operated, it's probably since 2008. That may have been when we incorporated or LLC'd, maybe 2012. And
Got
we've
it.
been, yeah, so
All right.
probably a little bit of, but everything else was accurate. Good
Okay.
job.
Thanks. Well, I'm firing a researcher because there are no mistakes made on this show. All right.
Absolutely not.
All right. So you've worked for other companies for 15. You worked for other companies for 15 years before going out on your own. What was the catalyst that made you jump and say, like, all right, cool, I'm going to go ahead and start my own agency?
My own thing. So a few things. In 2008, at that time, I was working for a larger tech company called BEA, and they were being acquired by Oracle. And I had had a taste of a larger, a larger software company during that time, and I didn't want to go any larger than they already were. So I knew that. And then we were given the opportunity to try to find a job at Oracle or take the package. It was a great package. So I basically had an opportunity to take my time in my next job. We were also moving to Houston. And so I had all that going on. Plus, my mom was an entrepreneur. So there was a part of me that always knew that I would probably have my own path at some point. And this just felt like the combination of the perfect storm.
What'd your mom do?
So she's owned 3 or 4 businesses. She started off owning a daycare and then kept the daycare and added on an executive suite. So back in the day before they had the WeWorks, when they had the secretary up front and you would rent out the offices. So she had one of those. Then was getting into a little bit of commercial real estate when my father's job took him to Houston. And so she kept sold some of the businesses, kept some of the businesses, and then got into residential real estate in Houston and had a really successful company until she retired.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Hopefully her
Very
WeWork.
entrepreneurial spirit, yes.
Hopefully her WeWork was a little bit more profitable.
Right, yes.
So, and then we also read that your dad was in advertising and marketing, and that influenced
Correct.
you to jump into that? Okay.
Yep.
Was he like an old school ad man or?
He was, yeah. So back traveling, doing photo shoots. Like some of his clients were American Airlines and JCPenney.
Right on, those are good brands.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was he so on the madman side that pushed you so far over to the let's protect
I need
women
to
in
watch.
marketing?
I have not seen that show, but
Really?
I've heard. I've heard it. Yes, I know. Hopefully, he was not like that. But I have not seen the show.
You're like, wait a second. You're seeing certain things.
I was like, Mad Men is like the opposite of what we're talking about.
Yes,
today.
right. Here I am.
All right. So another question. So you're a demand generation expert, and I asked a couple different people what this meant. And I think some people may be confused about what that is. Can you explain what that is exactly? Yeah.
So I think first I'll start off by saying, while we're a digital marketing agency, just like others, I'm sure many of the ones listening, I feel like everybody's got their unique flair and their unique niche within it. And so our unique niche is really demand gen strategy. And demand gen is the strategy by which a company builds pipeline and leads for sales. And there's like a few different elements to it. So there's the campaign planning, which we all know, like email marketing, SEM, SEO, et cetera. And that is part of what we do. But there's content strategies that are pretty complex and deep for our industry. So it's not just about drafting a blog. It's about mapping out content across the life cycle so you can meet people where they need to be met. It's about long nurture cycles. So there's that element of it. And then there's the sales and marketing relationship and the processes by which you operate both of those functions together. And it's campaigns and content, but there's also like a workflow to it all. And so we really help companies like across everything that includes setting up the infrastructure to have a demand gen engine, to have like constant leads coming in. So it's multifaceted, but I feel like it carves out our niche a bit more than just being, SEO, because we just find our clients aren't looking for just one thing. So that's how we position ourselves and how I would
Okay.
define demand gen.
All right. And ready to get into some of the women empowerment side of things as
Yeah,
it relates
sure.
to digital marketing?
Let's do it.
Okay, so when it comes to, let's say somebody owning an agency, how would one foster this?
I don't know if I understand the question.
How would one fostering or, creating an environment that empowers women to do more?
Okay. So for me, we are a team of all women. And while that has been by design, it's not necessarily something I'm wed to like forever.
You do have a male intern.
Huh?
You do have a male intern.
Yes, we do right now. But the interns tend to be on cycles. So, I guess when I was starting off on my first position out of college, I had a great mentor that not only poured hard skills into me, like teaching me about website development or, campaign planning, but also really focused on building my soft skills, like speaking and organization and how I held myself in public. She spent actually, I feel like more time there with me than she did on the skills, because I didn't know it at the time, but looking back on it, those are the harder things to develop. Skills can be learned and taught. You can read, you can watch videos, etc. But you can't always learn to read people or be empathetic or understand how to read a room. And so I feel like the work that she did with me there ended up becoming such a pivotal part of how I had success in life that I really wanted to pour back into women in that way. And then I feel like there's these other struggles that came into my life, like later on as my career progressed, when I started having children and getting married and stuff. And there's just a lot of pressure to do it all, or leave your work because you're a bad mother if you don't. And I had fought through those battles. They were internal battles. They were external, battles that you may feel some peer pressure from your friends. I fought through them for different reasons for each child. The first one, we financially could not afford for me to not work, so I had no choice. In the second one, I feel like that's when I was building my own business, and so I was making the choices for different reasons. But there's not a lot of women out there talking about this kind of stuff, and the decisions that we face and the shame that we feel in some of these career moves is hard. And so I care about pouring back into people because I wish more people were talking about it when I was going through it.
So it sounds like some of it's societal, right? Like you mentioned friends and some of the other things. So it's a construct that we can choose to believe in, right? Like we can choose to believe in kind of these self-fulfilling myths that, it sounds like you saying maybe it's self-shaming. Like, all right, it's the woman's role where you got to do double duty. And the guy just kind of gets like, yeah, I go to work and you got these, this whole kid situation.
For me, it wasn't that black and white. My husband's always been supportive. So, I don't know. It's a little bit of your internal narrative that you're having to fight through. It's a lot of that. And so, because there's not a lot of people talking about it, you don't feel normal when you're facing these things for the first time. So yeah, I think I built an environment that is so back to your original question is how do you even do that? I talk about these things with my team. I'm very transparent about the struggles. I try to show them how to bring balance when it comes to, family and career and in marriage. I'm very open with them about even how my husband and I talk about work. While he's not in the business, he has a small role within the business. So I just really try to show them all sides of it, almost as modeling, so they know that there are women out here that are doing this successfully. Because my mom was an entrepreneur and I didn't have a role model for this. My mom was an entrepreneur and I did not have a role model for this. So nobody shows you how to do this. nobody talks about what's hard. And so I just try to bring that openness inside the company as a way of empowering them.
Right on. So you're like super open with your staff. I mean, not the cliched like family. It's pretty real.
Yeah, I mean, they know a lot about what I deal with on a day-to-day basis. I don't try to hide it. Yeah, I think if you hide it, you're not. Yeah, it's in a way you're like not teaching them how to blend it, and it's not going to go away. You're not going to like not have a family if you choose to go down that path. So you may as well help them understand how it all gets incorporated together.
And you said your mentor was somebody that was in a similar role. It was a boss of yours.
So my mentor was brought in as a boss, like in my last year at that company. And so, yeah, she was like a vice president of marketing at the time.
Are you still in touch with this person?
I haven't talked to her in a while. I keep in touch with her. She travels the
Shannon.
world now. I know. I mean, not by not trying, but I feel like she's maybe in Asia. I don't know, or Europe somewhere. I don't know, but not as accessible as she used to be.
Okay. All right. After this could be the catalyst that you reach out and you're like, hey, I just talked to these guys and wanted to let you know. Or if you don't, we're going to find her based on our researcher who the new is going to replace the other one, and we'll email her a link to the video.
Or she's going to watch this or listen to this podcast and see you on here and
Yes.
go, I need to reach out to Shannon.
Right.
All right. So, want to get into now insofar as your company is concerned, you have multiple women. Have any of them mentioned the struggles that they're having, or is it kind of like a one-way conversation as far as this dialogue is concerned?
I feel so predominantly I have hired younger women in the age of like 21 to 24. So they're obviously in a very specific part of life dealing with a very specific thing. So some of the things that have come up with that age range, I don't even want to be able to take credit for bringing it into the discussion, because we happened to be at a women empowerment event, and it was a speaking topic. Mm-hmm. But it was talking about how women are predominantly really bad about asking for career moves, or whether it's in the form of raises or title changes. They're not good about asking for like the next level. And so it was giving you different practices and things to be thinking about in order to make that conversation easier for you as a woman. So those are some of the things that are coming up at that age range. Not as much family, obviously, because they're just getting out of college and starting to date more seriously. Right. In some cases, they're not even dating people. We also have young mothers. And so what's interesting about our business model and having them in the force is when I was younger and had young kids, it was great to be able to be working from home. And if I needed to be at somebody's school at 3 o'clock, I was self-employed, I could block my calendar and get over there. And so she's just in a great role with the company right now, where she's got a young child and she's got, her own personal needs. She wants to be there for things like that with him. And because she's remote, she has that, flexibility to be able to do that with her schedule. So I love knowing that I appreciated having that flexibility that time in my life and having the environment to be able to give that back to other young mothers. I mean, not to say that she's not working full time, but we have a bit more of an autonomous, flexible, vibe. You get your work done and you don't need to tell me where you are every minute of the day type of thing. So
with that, how, with what you provided, how would a man have a conversation like that? You know what I mean? Is it impossible? It's you shouldn't get down on that level.
If it was reverse engineered, if you were in my position.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I don't know. Let me ask you, how would you have that conversation?
Try to just create a playing field where everybody, an open space where anybody can communicate what they want to, right? But I think there's there's what we don't know, and it's, if somebody doesn't feel like they have a voice, doesn't necessarily mean I would notice that they don't have a voice.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know if there were certain prompts or things, like you mentioned, like the titles and the raises. Granted,
like how would you, well, I think, I mean, I'm not telling you to go and read, different books, but there was one book that I read that actually was super enlightening to me about the way that men process differently than women. And it's by Brene Brown.
Kind of sounds sexist, but okay.
Yeah. No, it's actually, I mean, it was like, I learned a lot about men. It was an equal, I felt like it was an equal representation. And so the gist of it is that women carry a lot of shame. Men basically feel like they have to be bold and brave at all times. And there was a lot of background about why that is, and a lot of, cultural things. Anyway, I think just being aware that women carry certain things in a certain way and process it. Like, women don't like to ask for things usually. Like I don't want to say usually, it depends on the woman. You've got all different types of personalities, etc. But more women will struggle with asking for promotions, raises, things, because especially if they're mother, they may feel like, oh my God, but I need to tend for my child, and I have such a good thing and I don't want to lose it. And so I don't want to ask for more. So I think it's helpful if men just remember that that's part of like the DNA that a lot of women carry.
Mm-hmm. And that's inside and outside of business, correct? I mean, because that's, exactly. I talk to my wife all the time, don't hint, just tell me.
Right.
I'm not good. Don't expect me to pick up a hint. I need you to just tell me.
Yeah. And I think it's not a better or worse, but we think so differently. Mm-hmm. And it's, I find it sometimes hard to remember that, my husband doesn't process things the same way that I do. And I mean, it comes into work and or personal relationships.
And do you think you're noticing any changes along those kind of lines with the different generation? Because I feel like the younger generation of men are not following along that traditional path or thought process.
Yeah, I don't know if I have enough exposure to. It feels that way. It definitely feels that way, but like, I'm not working with a lot of men in the work environment, so I don't feel like I get to see that, or especially a lot of the millennials, to where I can like really, I don't feel like I have a good data set for it, to be honest, but it does feel that way.
I feel like I'm working with a lot more stronger women,
mm-hmm.
and many of the men aren't as maybe the traditional sense
bold
from the 60s or
yeah. I feel like I'm definitely working with stronger, bolder women. Yes. Yeah. And that I do feel like I've got a good data set for.
Little role reversal. That's empowering.
Yeah.
How do you think, has women empowerment changed marketing messages at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm sure it has, in good ways and bad ways. I think just like, I don't know, I can answer this from a few different angles. There's just a lot of focus on this right now, for good reason. There's a lot of people in a what I would call a very crowded space, and they're kind of claiming what feels like very different areas of this. To be honest, I'm not really comfortable with all the areas of women empowerment. I don't, to me, I don't need to be in an argument about, I do believe we deserve equal pay, but I don't need to go and picket something because I believe it that strongly. I think I care more about reminding women that if they want it, they can have it, and kind of to get out of their own way, than I care about fighting for feminism in all different angles. So what I think that does from the marketing message is it's crowded. In some cases, it's dirty. You have all these little, Instagram sites and marketing messages with boss babe, and it cheapens the message. In fact, it like hurts it more than helps it. But there's a lot of other companies that know that this is kind of the next wave that's going to continue to change social norms, and they're getting behind it. And you're seeing a lot more women on boards, a lot more women in CEO positions. I just hope, you know, that these companies are making those type of decisions for the right reasons, because those women are right to be in the roles, and not because they want to look like, you know, they're on board with women, you know, supporting women. So I don't know, you're seeing markets evolve in all sorts of different ways, and messages evolve in all sorts of different ways, some good, some bad.
No, I think that's a great answer. And I think it's important to add, you know, a distinction to it. It sounds like to you, and awareness is important as long as things aren't getting cheapened,
Yeah.
as you put it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost as some people are using it as like a flag for something, when that's not the point of what is trying to be accomplished here.
And and these, you know, of course, these are only my opinions, but this is not just a sexual conversation for me. In fact, if I divide this into pie,
Mm-hmm.
the sexual is just maybe an eighth of it.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it's there because it, you know, it is. The women and men power dynamics are different, but like that's not the core message to me, or the thing that keeps me up at night, that I feel like I am, you know, beneath men. It has more to do with balance, mindset, not carrying this shame thing, that, you know, knowing that you can have it all if you want it all. You know, being bold enough to take some of the big risks that you're going to have to take to get there. Yeah. So there's just
So no, I
there's
think
all
that speaks
sorts
to
of ways
something.
of entering the message, but it's not always just the sexual side.
So before I kind of interrupted you there, sorry about that. The one of the things I think is the saddest thing with any person, whether it's an employee or anybody that I'm working with, is somebody not living up to their potential.
Right. Exactly.
That is something that even keeps me up at night. Like, no, I can do better, you know? So it sounds a little bit like that's what you were talking about.
Yeah. But except less about the, you're not living up to your potential, and more about like, it can be if you let it be.
Right.
And so, and here's what's going to be hard. And here's what's all like, you're always going to struggle here, but here's some ways of doing it that make it possible. So where I come from is less preachy, but it's just more like, you can have it if you want it. Like, people do this because there's a lot of women that's, you know, at least when I was growing up and making these decisions, that put that barrier there and just never take the step. And there's a lot of women that end up as solopreneurs. They have the idea of starting a business, but then they don't really want to go above and beyond because of the sacrifices that they may feel like it'll take from their family or something else. And so, you know, I don't know that this stat is, I need to pull the latest stat, so I apologize that I don't have it, but I believe it was like last year, there's only 2% of women-owned businesses that ever make it over $1 million. 2%.
Really?
So I have a feeling that over maybe the last year, I mean, the amount of women businesses is just like flying through the roof these days. So it hopefully has gone up, but it's a sad statistic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope it has gone up. And so moving into more of a marketing question, you stated that you treat every engagement with a custom approach and you don't believe in one size fits all, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you said, quote unquote, we build the right team with the right expertise for each engagement. We have the talent to ideate and the ability to execute your B2B marketing and demand generation plans all within one company. I love that approach, right? But how did you come to that determination? Was that organic? Was that...
Like, how did I decide on that being...
Yeah,
like,
this is the way that we're going to do it. How'd you come up with that?
Yeah, so... well, I was on the corporate side for a while, and you work with agencies, and you just find them like throwing just their dart at your board. And if their dart was, we run our email campaigns like this, oh, it's going to be great. You know, it's going to generate a lot of leads for you. And it's very systematic. It's like four emails with driving to these 4 assets. And then at the end of the day, it was like a sucky campaign. But that was like their product, like packaging. And so I just saw a lot of agencies doing that. And I just felt like fundamentally, like, I understand why agencies do it, because it allows you to create a repeatable service model that you can just bring clients into, but it doesn't really serve the customer well. It does, like, if their market doesn't respond to that type of communication style, that's not going to work for them. So we have like the opposite approach. We just start the conversation at in a different area. And it's really about like how their customers buy. And we send all of our clients, we actually started requiring this last year, but all of our clients down what we call a go-to-market framework, which is a study of the buying habits. And then we take what we learn from it. And what we're oftentimes finding is the stuff, like the steps that people are not taking to purchase. So like for an example, we have a leadership training company that we were doing this type of work for. And in studying the buying process, we found out that nobody was doing Google searches or making any type of purchase like this from anyone other than somebody, like a referral from somebody that they trusted. So it shifted us into like pushing AdWords and LinkedIn campaigns and anything like that out of the mix. And then we knew that we actually had to come up with a referral, like come up with an easy way of allowing their customer base to make referrals. So it just, by starting with studying the buyers and then like understanding how they buy, then we architect the campaign around that. So I think that what you read off is really just speaking to how we started.
Okay, so you started that way originally, is what I'm hearing.
Do what?
When you started your consultancy and then turned into your agency, that was your approach all along.
Yep. Yeah.
So like 5 years ago,
it comes from my demand gen skill set, I think, or what do you call it? A career evolution. But I was always studying the customers to set up teams and build campaigns from that perspective. So it just felt like the logical way to create an agency around the model.
Oh, okay.
I feel like 5 years ago, there was a big push for everyone to productize their services. And, you know, everybody drove towards this generic marketing playbook, and just so that they could scale their pitches and scale their sales, when the reality is you just produced a bunch of generic work out there. And I mean, if these companies are just trying to rinse, repeat, they're just terrible
and when
results.
you get the ideal client, it could totally work. I mean,
sure.
I feel like I know some successful agencies that do it.
Sure.
I just don't like that kind of work.
Me and John call that the generic marketing playbook, and I feel like if you're pulling plays from the playbook, then that's what everyone else is doing too.
I know, right? I'm like kind of a custom, I like
and
my
it's not
own
even the bare minimum. It's just, you shouldn't do that, right? It's like, oh, well, you know, we're going to go ahead and do 2 tweets per day, and this whole thing, it doesn't work that I've ever seen, because it's just an outdated model. I like the custom approach, but with the custom approach, how does that scale? Like, have you seen?
Yeah, so I think what we've had to do, and this has been tricky for us, to be honest, and it's still like a work in progress, but you still have to create repeatable processes within a custom framework. Mm-hmm. So, for example, like our go-to-market framework is like a 10-week process that has like clearly defined steps, but the input that we are getting is obviously unique to each client. And we may have to tweak. I will say that with any go-to-market framework right now, we've done so many, we're probably tweaking about 15 to 20% of it to make it unique for the client. But that 15 to 20% is almost like on a lever now. So I'm starting to use the same levers. Mm-hmm. So I'm probably down to like maybe 5 different levers that I've pulled on it. So there's some repeatability even within some of the stuff that's a bit more custom. Is what we're finding right now.
What's an example of something that you would tweak?
Um, mm, mm, mm. So sometimes one of our profile client or target clients is like a software company. And if we have a software company that has maybe a multi sales model approach, like maybe some through partners versus sales versus maybe BDRs, like that wouldn't be an uncommon setup. So indirect, direct, and then like your telequal team. That would send us down a very specific route in how we are thought about and architected campaigns that would be very different if we were working with a law firm and trying to develop campaigns that we knew had to be kind of lead triage, had to go to the lawyers. Like we're really taking into account the team dynamics and and the whole buying process to layer on like the right type of solution. Now
Gotcha.
in both cases, we know that we're going to need some type of like sales alignment or lead triage from marketing to from marketing to sales, but it's going to look completely different. And we may not have a playbook to create either one because we haven't, they're unique.
Right.
The client.
So there's some serious levers. You're organizing very complex things. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we don't just, we're not just running campaigns for clients. We're
It's not
involved
you're literally pulling this giant lever at that point.
Yes. So, yeah.
All right. So you're, as you mentioned earlier, talking about women in mentoring, you're well documented speaking this on a few places online. You mentioned a person that has, had a lot of impact on you, who you promised to contact immediately after we're finished with this interview. But as far as mentoring the people in your life, I have a few people that I mentor, and they've reached out. Can you tell me about like your process? Is it like, do you define it? I always find it interesting on how people take on this role as being a mentor.
Yeah. So I haven't taken on a mentor outside of any of my team members right now. And I by design, and I think I like it. One of the things I've realized about myself over the last maybe year or two is that I think I like seeing the impact of my work.
Yeah.
So while I didn't make a choice not to do it, I have noticed how fulfilling it is to just see it every day. Just see somebody's growth, see how somebody's progressing in terms of like how they're holding themselves or speaking. So most of the work that I'm doing is inside the company. And in terms of how I do it, I feel like it's a little bit part of just the DNA of the company. So we have a very like, don't hold feedback back type of mentality. So like even yesterday, we were doing a very casual lunch and learn, and we're constantly giving feedback on soft and hard skills as a way of developing. And when I hire people, I make that very like apparent that if you're coming into this culture, like number one, this is what you're going to get. And then number two, we're not hard. I feel like we're very soft and gentle with feedback, but you need to want to accept and receive feedback. And I think it's important for like people to know that that's part of our culture.
So,
but yeah, that's how we do it now.
I just recently
we've got all the normal management checkpoints in place too, where I can, do it there as well.
Right on.
I just had an issue this week that I want to get your thought on. Do you feel it's better to continually correct or continually critique in hopes that you're going to stop a failure in the future? Or do you rather just correct it in the future when you're probably going to make more of an impact on correcting it during the mistake? Because I guess my personal feeling is that I make a lot of grumpy people trying to stop future issues. And I'm just being too proactive on trying to train somebody, and I just create grumpy people.
Do
you let the bomb go off?
I kind of feel like that's what you got to do.
I think there's probably devils in the details here. I will definitely model and show as we go, but they may not necessarily like, I think what you're talking about feels a bit more situational, which I don't.
So I guess hypothetically, let's say that nothing happened, right? It's somebody breaks a process, but nothing happened for them not breaking the process, right? Do you wait to tell them like, hey, you didn't do it, which could be considered nitpicking, right? You didn't follow this thing by the process, or would you wait until them going outside of process actually caused an issue worth talking about?
I probably would be in front of it, because the process existed for a reason. And right now, I mean, maybe it's our scale, or I'm sorry, our size right now, but in where we are in our growth, but we're having to redo all of our redo all of our processes because we just did all of our departments. And so I'm kind of a little bit of a process Nazi right now. So I would have probably been in front of it because they're there for a reason, and I want them to understand the swim lanes. If you don't understand the swim lanes, then other people are going to break it, and then the whole thing's going to break. Is a bit more of my mentality.
So my analogy that I always like to go with, and I'm just like you, I want to be in front of it, but I'm getting so much resistance that I'm starting to question, should I be a little bit more reactive? But
yeah, and I think it can. I feel like I've been there too, where you're almost harping so much, where they're tuning you out.
Yes.
And so I think, honestly, we were in this situation last quarter, and it was a really pivotal time for the company. We were departmentalizing, redoing all the processes. We had like half the team was new, and like every day it was just like we're having to serve clients and deal with broken things. So I feel like the whole team was down, and me nitpicking at that level was just not good because of the team spirit at the time. So I probably should have done it less then, but I felt like it had to do more with where we were mentally. If I did it more, I actually trust things now. So I don't, you know what? I think it sends a message of no trust, which is maybe where you're feeling people pushing back, because I think I was doing it because I didn't trust that the process was working. I was barking about it because I didn't trust it. So maybe as a manager, it's probably a good question to like, is that the best way to deliver it to where, you don't want people thinking you don't trust them? I don't know.
You got to empower.
Yeah, I don't know, but I ran into that too last quarter, and it is tough.
So you're on the Forbes Agency Council, right?
Yep.
And granted, not everybody can get on this. I'm aware of that, but is that a bit of a pay for play game?
Yeah. No, I was gonna say if you pay, you might have to be at a certain a revenue level, but it is pay to play. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think a lot of people outside of agency and PR like always know that. So I think, in some cases it's got some credibility, which I think is why you see a lot of people jumping on board. But yeah, pay to play.
I think Inc. offers one too. And
I wouldn't be surprised if some of the other ones are doing it. I don't know.
Are there any other places you would recommend for, agency owners? Like, yeah, this is something else, based on Forbes Council to spread out your PR message?
I would say like generally it's always good to be speaking out in the markets. So that's something that we're spending a lot of more time doing now. Forbes has been good. I'm not sure it's something I'll continue. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. And I haven't really, I'm not taking advantage of anything more like that. And we publish like regular blogs on our own blog.
Which you're a great writer. Yeah, we read quite a few of them.
Yeah, we produce like two a month.
So one of your tweets mentions that you often think back to what you could have done differently and what advice you would tell your younger self. So what would you tell your younger self?
Knowing what did I say?
It's something you oftenly reflect at. So insofar as, let's just keep it within the constraints of, agency ownership. Is there something now that you're like, oh, I would go back to 2008 and say,
yeah, I really wish I would have. So for me, the evolution of like my decision points were 2008 became like self-employed. Did that for like 4 years and got enough business to where I had some subcontractors and started building the business that way. And then did that for a few years and was moving back to Dallas. And when we were moving back to Dallas, it was like final home, final, kids' school area. We were just putting our roots down. And it wasn't until then, which was 2014 or 15, where I was like, what am I going to do with Lead It? I was still in this like lifestyle business / solopreneur mode. So I wish I would have gotten out of my way earlier, because I really didn't even decide to scale this until I was in my 40s. So, hindsight 2020, maybe it's going to give me the voice of like, and I feel like women get in their own way. I had kids, I had kid guilt. I had all sorts of different things that was making that decision hard for me. And as a reminder, my mother, adore her. And she taught me so much of what I know today, but it was hard. It's hard being raised by an entrepreneur. And I did not know if I wanted to do that to my children. And so that was a big barrier for me to get over. So I wish I would have just gotten over that earlier. That would probably be my one regret. But other than that, I try not to live with regrets. I try to learn and take forward.
Reminds me, I had, I don't know if this is why my mouth is shaped like, maybe this will sound stupid. I don't know. We'll see. There was a guy I first met when I started my career, and he was talking about his kids, and he said to me, and granted, I don't have kids. I don't want to make this thing, it had reflection on it, but he said, you know what? They sure get in the way of your ambition. And I was like, wow. I was like, damn, dude. And I've met his kids. I felt like that's how he looked at it. It was just really oh, wow. It just doesn't, it's kind of cringy. Yeah.
I've never thought of it that way, but there's a truth.
I'm not saying you're saying that. That's just, it's constant. Yeah.
There's a truth in that, or you're sharing the ambition with something else that needs a lot of your time.
Yeah.
And so,
but what is ambition without that kid though? That's what
right.
If I don't
that's my life.
For me personally, I just had a baby girl, and now I'm like, yes, now I'm working towards something. Because before I'm like, if it's not going to happen, I'm retiring early, sitting on a beach, and my living standards go down to just barely enough to stay on that beach because I don't need anything. I'm not passing anything down to anyone.
Yep. Yeah.
On your social media, I noticed you follow Tim Ferriss. One post stuck out to me. Mm-hmm. Big fan. All right,
perfect. Huge fan.
So it had to do with his research on psychedelics.
Yeah.
So magic mushrooms, as the kids would say. What interests you about that topic, and are you doing your own research?
No, and I'm not actually. That's not a path that I'm pursuing or interested in per se. But what I appreciate about the work that he's doing to drive more awareness for that market is that I guess I'm not a huge proponent of pills and prescriptions and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I don't have a long history, or I don't have any history with depression. I have some friends that have depression, but what they're finding with the psychedelic research is that people that have been are experiencing really deep depression from PTSD related things are totally clicking out of it with these with psychedelics. So I am behind anything that is a more natural way of maybe doing mind work without having to put a prescription to it every day. And listening to Tim's journey, I'm sure do you listen to his podcast? By the way, you asked that question. It sounded like you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he speaks a lot about, his journey with depression. And I just feel like it's been transformative. Some of the work that's being done here. It's super fascinating. And I do have some friends that have taken this path and speak very highly of it. So it's not something I'm considering at this time. I have nothing against it. I'm not at a point where I need to do that right now.
In college, I majored in this path.
Huh? Yeah.
So in college, I majored in this passion.
Yeah. So it's interesting stuff.
Do you do any other, because he's always about like a sample of one and trying to improve himself the best that he can, you know, whether it's like nootropics or psychedelics, so on and so forth. Do you have any routines or anything that you recommend for yourself that you get the most out of your day, or you can stay
Yeah.
focused longer?
So mine are, I would say, less about putting things into my body. Not that I'm not, I just haven't focused my work on that part yet. Although it's of interest to me too. So mine's a bit more like routine-ish about how I start my day. So I'm pretty methodical about like what time I wake up. I try to get up at 5 a.m. every day. I don't drink at all anymore because I was just finding that it was interrupting my sleep. So I'm like pretty good about making sure I get to bed at night, like by 9 or 10, so I can get like a really solid amount of sleep. I wake up and like I have my normal routine, but I start my day with podcasts, and I find that different ones. So I don't like, when I first started off, I was kind of like only starting with one Tim. And then I found like some days I'm not in the mood for Tim, which is rare. I'm actually usually in the mood for his stuff, but you might actually have caught up on all of his things. So I've got now a mix that I go between. And that is almost like a workout for my brain. It just gets me started. And then I'm finding lately that I like to start moving quickly. Like I think better when I'm walking and moving. And so my youngest daughter has a longer carpool ride, so I need to take her more because I really enjoy like getting in the car with an hour-long ride just to think and kind of process things in my day is like beneficial to me. So, but I don't get to do that one every day. It's like every other day, because I'm trading off with my husband on certain days.
Yeah, I do a similar. I wake up pretty early. I start with a podcast early in the morning usually. I have a rule though that in the first hour nobody can ask. So I try to get up early. Nobody can ask me an in-depth question.
Yeah.
It's just it's crazy.
I don't have that rule, but nobody is up at that time, so it ends up being like it just happens. That's funny. I'm the same way. And then I'm really religious about food, and also pretty religious. Well, I talked about sleep. What else? I think that's about it. That's a lot, though.
It is, yeah. Hey, everybody's got their
a little bit boring these days.
No, hey, as long as you're getting the things done you want, right?
Yeah.
So where do you think other agencies and or companies are missing out when it comes to marketing today?
Other agencies are missing out.
Mm-hmm. You could, or other companies. Yeah, like where are the spot? You're like, I can't believe this.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I feel I'm still small and growing, so there's a part of me that's like, gosh, they could give me advice. Who am I to say you should be doing this? But I do feel like one thing we do well, that I'm always surprised that other agencies haven't gone down the path, is really claiming their niche, and really owning it. So we're demand. So we have multiple niches within a niche. So we're B2B tech and professional services, and then within that we're demand gen, and we're strategists first. So we're not gonna allow you to use this as an order taker. If you're calling us just to do like SEM and you want to tell us exactly what ad to run, like we're not your partner. So like we position for long-term partnerships, retainers, B2B tech, in demand gen, where we can run the strategy with pretty narrow focus. Did
you start there, or did you realize this stuff's either A, not profitable, we hate doing it, or C, I just don't like working with those companies?
So my experience is exactly where I just laid it out. I think what we took a while to do is claim it publicly, but it's always been part of my pitch. And when I think like my business started growing by referrals, and because so much of my network is in the tech space, it was just logical that that was going to become my clientele. So it's always been part of the pitch. It's always been part of like what we do. I think the only thing we layered on, which was maybe about, not last year, but the year before, was like branding that way. So when we launched our new website back in December of 2017, that was the first time to do that.
Was
And
that a
it
struggle?
helped us. It helped us attract more.
Yeah, was that a struggle? Because I know I've tried to like niche a little bit, and I'm just like, ugh, the sacrifices.
You know, it was, in the sense I was worried I was going to shoot myself in the foot. Like, what if we had another dot bomb period of time? Although tech has become so sad, like every company is a tech company, almost. So the dynamics have changed a little bit. That I was having trouble making the decision because of that, but then it helped. I talked myself over the ledge. And then I didn't want to like push business away, but at the same time, I have more people coming to me now outside of that market than I did when my branding was more open. So I feel
That's
like
what I hear.
It is. Well, and it probably has to do with where I am in my stage of growth. Like, I'm looking for more business these days. Before I wasn't.
But no, that's like, so the magic formula that all these people have talked about when you niche down and you do it right is the floodgates will open because you'll only be positioned in this one thing. And it sounds like that's,
yeah. I mean, there's
happening.
a lot. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of credit. But like, if I'm in a tech, so if I am in a tech company in Dallas that has demand gen needs, I mean, it's like slam dunk, because I'm the only one in this market, or one of the only ones in this market that can really claim that niche. And a lot of people, I'm curious what you're finding here, actually. I feel like a lot of our clients are starting to want more in-person like meetings and face-to-face. The whole being able to get into their offices is becoming wanted again. So
yeah, I would highly agree with
if you're
that.
running into that, or I don't know.
Yeah, and it's, it's funny, in like a sales situation, they're buying you, right? So there's like, oh, well, I believe in you. It's the person. So there's that part of when you're going through the strategy or the onboarding that you're then trying to give them over to your team members. But yeah, I agree. In fact, video though has helped out a lot.
Yeah.
With removing that. That's one of the things I think fortunate to have. And even just today, there was somebody who's like, hey, where are we going to meet? And I said, hey, I can swing by your office, but how about a Zoom video meeting?
They were like,
okay.
that sounds amazing. Can't wait.
Right. Yeah. And it was like,
been on 20 of those today.
yeah. Yeah. It's like, that works too, so that's something, but I agree. And I think things always go into a cycle, and that'll be coming around, and that'll be a differentiator where it's like, hey, we give you the personal touch, you were able to press the flesh, and it'll be, oh, well, those other people are AI and automated, and people just, we get a better feeling here. The results might be the best, but they feel good.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So is there anything I didn't cover that the world should know? Are you peddling or promoting anything that you would like to share? There was somebody on the podcast a few weeks ago that told us their favorite band he wanted the world to know about. Literally anything. This is your space.
Oh my goodness, anything. I didn't get to hear that one, so I didn't get to think that big.
I'll send it to you as soon as this is over. Don't worry.
Is this podcast getting entered into your rotation now in the morning?
Great question.
Oh, yeah. I am going to sign up for the climb. Yes.
Thank you.
I'm going to be your number 2 subscriber. No, just kidding. How many subscribers do you have?
Oh, that burns. No, we set up a bunch of fake accounts, so you'll be. No, I'm kidding.
No, yeah, I can't wait. So, are you producing it every Friday, one a week?
We're trying to do every one a week. Yeah, there's yeah. So that's the goal. But granted,
I love that you're doing it.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you so much for being on. Yeah, you've been awesome. We're shooting for. You're quite welcome. Shooting for once a week, and it's available. Little plug here. It's available on YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, and wherever podcasts are available.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's really cool.
We'll definitely go subscribe.
All right. Well, thank you. And I guess if you're not peddling or promoting anything other than Lead It, which will be in the show notes for sure, how can people get a hold of you?
So my direct email is do most people do that, or do they?
People do email, or which I'm surprised, but yeah, people get emails, and you can do social links, whatever you want.
Yeah. Okay. So for email, obviously it's sprager@leaditmarketing.com, and then you can follow us, or you can follow the company on all of the social channels, and then you can obviously access me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there, and Instagram.
Bingo. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, Max, you're only going to get about 3 emails if you give your personal email address out. So
Yeah, I guess.
as the stats are showing, yeah.
2 of them are me and John.
Yes, maybe we should say, where can we follow you? I think I took contact too literally.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe I should rephrase that question. You know
So
what?
my email is jon@oyova.com.
Nobody can spell that anyways. So.
Yeah, it's crazy. People I've known for like 20 years will still put like, "Hey, John, John." I'm like, dude, like seriously?
Like, are we BFFs? I thought we knew each other better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not
I
my
think if I ever do that, I'm so sorry. I even caught myself yesterday. Like sometimes that H just wants to slip in there.
No, I totally get it.
Blame it on the autocorrect.
All right, Shannon, thank you so much for being on. I really,
thank you.
really appreciate it. And yeah, look forward to talking with you again soon.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
All right, Dave. So how do you think that went?
Oh, that was great. It was really informative. Shannon just phrases it, I think, in an approachable way that you don't have to worry about, like she said earlier in the talk, where she's not trying to go in the nastier aspects of what women empowerment means, and I think she approaches it really well.
I agree. I think it was a great interview. She filled me in a lot. I was nervous asking questions because it felt like I don't know anything about these things, right? So just trying to make sure that I'm asking the right questions without sounding like an asshole. But I think at the same time, like you said, she shined a light on this is what it should be, or at least what it is to her. And I think that resonated with me. I was like, all right, that's something that also educates us. And even when talking with staff, I like the title part, the position, the compensation. Maybe that's something that more men need to be forward with female employees.
For me, though, when I really drill down what we're talking about here, the different genders or the different sexes are just an attribute of a person. When you're really talking to someone and you're judging or trying to get a read on them, their sex is just one attribute of who they are. Like, I guess going to my point earlier where I said that I think the gender roles are shifting and it's not so black and white, because society 50 years ago was putting you in a box. Are you a man or are you a woman? And you need to behave this. And that's why I think she was talking about the shame aspect for women, is that, they were told by society to feel that if they didn't do what they were supposed to do in their box.
Well, no, I don't even think it's that if they didn't do, they couldn't do.
Right.
You couldn't go to work and say, "Hey, I'm, going to be a female business owner. There was
still a societal pressure, and as those break down, then there's more. It's just more of an individual to individual conversation and negotiation. And I just think that more and more people, like, for me personally, I look at everyone as an individual, not a collected group. I don't treat someone as a woman, and I don't treat someone as a man. It just doesn't enter my brain, and it's just on the individual merits of what they're doing. And do they deserve the raise because they're a woman? No. Do they deserve the raise because they're a man? No. They deserve the raise because they did good work.
And I agree with that, but so granted, I think and maybe it's not something where it's a conversation saying, "Hey, do you want this promotion?" You're just given the promotion, is what you're saying, right?
Well, if somebody, I've had plenty of people, for one thing you're familiar with, we do quarterly review and raises.
Yep.
So we don't even entertain the thought of someone coming to us and talking and asking for a promotion other than those 4 quarterly milestones.
Right.
During that, I've coached people how they get more money and better reviews and better titles is they better come to their review with a PowerPoint on how great they're doing. It's their job to tell me how great they are, not my job to see it. And if an employee is going to expect me to promote somebody because, I think an employee needs to, I did a whole talk on this here locally, and I think you have to be prepared to brag about yourself in business today.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I don't even know if the promotion part is the best example, but when hiring somebody on, I've read studies that men are bolder, if we're going to use the language from earlier, in that conversation than
Sure.
women typically are, right? So, I mean, in that, I guess, and it's a weird combination, right? So, hiring somebody on, it's all right, we're going to see what the market value is. But if somebody's adding pressure, I want more things, it's like, would you
Well,
just make it flat and say, like, no, this is the only thing that we offer because it's got to be fair? That's what I'm saying. Those are the things that need to
sure.
be thought through. Not that I have the answer to those. And she,
So I had a big issue when the whole healthcare market changed. Um, and a- as an employer, we just have to offer healthcare flat for everyone. And I don't think anyone realized the unintended consequence was that the cost of caring for a woman skyrocketed. Now,
Mhm.
back in the day, you used to be able to, uh, you know, withhold pregnancy coverage. So then a woman's rates would pretty much be just in line with a man their same age.
Mhm.
But Obamacare kind of got rid of that. And then as an employer to cover a woman, the rate, skyrockets, or they have to pay a lot more out of their check. And I always thought it's so strange to me that we as a society actually created a mandate to treat, to because that will trickle down into hiring decisions. If you're a small business and you're going to have to pay twice as much to cover a woman versus a man, isn't that going to affect your hiring decision? And it's not supposed to, but it's going to.
I mean, there's laws in place, though. There might, based on just like a cost analysis standpoint,
Correct.
but then you get into like
But
in
that's our government kind of dictating, what we have to do and kind of enforce. And yeah, I just thought it was really strange because it
our
should not.
government making an imperfect decision.
Yeah.
No.
But when it's, you have to be, the reality of the situation is people will get affected by cost analysis.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's unfortunate, but yeah, I like, going back to the first episode that we talked about women in STEM. I mean, we're seeing just an increase,
Every
and
episode we bring up STEM.
somebody had to do it on this episode. But I think we're seeing a great new generation of women in technology and digital fields that, they're coming out. One of my top employees here at Oyova is just a great employee, and she rocks it. But I don't think it's because she's a female, but she might not have had this opportunity 20 years ago.
Yeah,
So
maybe she has the awareness, though, like Shannon was saying. I think that's really important. Like, you have the awareness that the societal constructs don't even apply to you unless you want them to, right?
right,
And I agree. I've seen a lot more, and I think just in my wife, a lot of independent,
yeah,
bold women.
right,
And I think it's all what she said. There's certain beliefs, though, that we can adopt that will hold us back. And that's anything, right? That's not
sure,
woman. I mean, I've even like talked to men in sales scenarios where they're telling me, I'm like, dude, this is like all in your head. Like, none of this actually even exists.
right. Well,
It's
it's
something.
funny talking about, when Shannon was mentioning all these things and get women getting in their own way. Like, everything she was talking about, it just reminded me, my wife Erica actually agreed to purchase her first business in the bed that she, recovered from giving birth to Emma. Like, literally within 24 hours of giving birth, acquired a business to become an entrepreneur. And it was just, she talks about it all the time. Like, I was crazy for doing that, but I applaud her for, just had a baby. And the first thing she's thinking about is, I just bought a business. Like, I think that's just amazing, but she's struggling with some of those things of feeling like, I guess a little bit of guilt when she has to do things and Emma's upset. But I mean, I think more power to her. That's and I think the whole shame thing has got to be going away. But what are your thoughts on, in my experience with most of the women that I work with and know, their biggest critics are other women.
Um, hmm. I Well, I don't know. Like, is there do you have like data to support that? I think
No,
because I mean, men's biggest critics are going to be men because they're more than likely around more men. Women's biggest critics are going to be their biggest critics because they're going to be around
but if
typically
they're in
more
the
women.
business place, that it's slanted towards men, it should be. I don't know. I feel like, yeah, I don't know. But I just wonder if it's that competitive thing. Like, when Shannon was talking about, somebody saying, "Oh, you shouldn't be doing this." Well, most of the time that's rooted in jealousy. They're not allowed to work from home, or they're not allowed to be a stay-at-home mom, so they're going to push that jealousy or that angst to the woman that is staying at home. It's almost like the reverse.
I would almost say that almost any negative comment to another person is almost rooted in an envy or jealous thing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
True.
Yeah, based on it's like, yeah, anytime you're going to typically put something down, it's saying something about you that you're wanting. But I mean, even back to your wife, right? And I see this a lot. There's a lot of people that are trying, and I hate this word, entrepreneur, but trying to be an entrepreneur.
What word do you use?
A business owner.
Yeah, but it's different. A business owner is different than an entrepreneur.
Maybe, but it's really cool to be one right now.
Yeah.
It's, whether social media has really glamorized that.
Sure.
But being an entrepreneur, it's not for everybody, right? You're going to try it. Some people don't want to take that on. And maybe that's some of the feeling that some people feel when they take on a business. Because like we talked about last week, it can be super lonely. You're just like, okay, you're like, who? Like, I mean, you and I are lucky. We can have a conversation, right?
Sure.
But other than that, it's like outside of that. And then you're going to talk to friends and they're typically just employees. And that's also, kind of lonely. So let's take this another step further. Okay. You have women that are now business owners. They have the societal constructs that they're already dealing with. So that's mental real estate that you got to deal with and process.
Sure.
And that's just, it's extra shit. And then, you also have less women that are business owners that are at that same level.
Even lonelier.
Exactly. So I think
Right.
that is something that maybe there's not even enough awareness on that part, whether it's, the empowerment side or just, all right, yeah. And loneliness has got to be one of the shittiest states of emotions that there is, right? Because that is definitely the absence of happiness. And to be clear too, it's the difference between being alone and loneliness, because you can get a lot accomplished when you're alone.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I find, you're right that I get to have this conversation with you. It's a really good outlet. But it does remind me of, large social gatherings when, friends are talking about, their W-2 taxes. And I mean, it's everything inside me. I want to be like, you want to talk about taxes?
Yeah.
Like it is tough because you can't have those conversations, or you sound just, there's no way to say, hey, I pay 18 times more in taxes than you and not sound like a dick. So,
right. Or I employ, a ton of people that are having that exact same conversation.
Right.
Or, or people complaining about, their boss being, a prick, and he wanted me to do it this or work long hours. It's like, well, yeah. I mean, you're instantly flipping that and looking at yourself, all right, well,
I've had people tell me all the time they complain about having to work overtime or something. I'm like, do you want to get anywhere in your career? That's how you do it. That's hustle.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just don't see it from the. So I do give a lot of advice in the interview and how to handle situations, because I'm giving them the manager/owner perspective so that they can see how to craft their message so it's not going to just sound like a whiny employee.
Mm-hmm.
And I found, that's how I connect with a lot of people at the, when giving advice like that, because a lot of people don't understand. They just think it's, the entrepreneur or the business owner just gets to sit up in their ivory tower and just, send down orders and then just things happen. It's not.
And what I try to communicate is the amount of decisions. Like at the end of the day, when you're really tired and you don't want to think about anything, and I'll explain that and like, oh yeah, I feel like that. Like, okay, imagine making that many decisions that got you to that point 2 hours after you started your day. That's what it's like being a business owner.
Yeah.
And if you can deal with that, and that's fine, and then realize that a lot of those things you're going to make mistakes, risk, there's going to be money lost, and the only person to blame is yourself, then that's what you need to understand, that either A, your boss or the owner is potentially going through. Now, if you have this blamey, unambitious boss, you know, or this ambitious boss,
that's a middle manager.
Yeah, I don't know how to deal with that situation other than, you know, just do your best and, you know, wait it out. But there was one thing during the talk with Shannon I wanted to ask you is, I think you mentor people, right? Outside of staff, do you take the time to mentor others?
Well, I did want to jump in on that conversation because I feel like I think every business owner is a mentor. You kind of have to be, right?
Sure. Yeah,
You know,
I agree with that.
So you're going to be mentoring your staff continually. And I like how she said that she likes to do it within business. I mean, she's going to be the biggest beneficiary of that work that she does, mentoring her staff. So she's growing her business.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that she was just honest about that. But mentoring outside of work, like I have some close friends that come to me for advice on certain things, but I don't know if I would call it like an official mentorship.
Yeah, I've had a couple that have just reached out. I had breakfast with one the other day. There's this other guy that calls me, and that's what I find weird. Like they kind of like, and I got to give it to them. And the reason they talk to me about it, they set up this official structure to some extent, right?
Right.
I don't want to say it's coaching, but you know, all right, they'll text me when they want the phone call. You know, they'll reach out to me to do like a lunch or a breakfast. And then I started looking at that, and maybe the reason that has been attracted is I set up something similar in my career. Like if there was somebody else like, yeah, that guy knows everybody, he knows all these things, I would reach out and then just continually stay in touch.
Right.
And I think it's an important part of, you know, whether it's just career, hygiene, being in business, whatever you want to say, making contacts and connections. But here's the flip side. Like most things in my life, it wasn't like connected. Like you're saying, like Shannon's is really, really smart, right? She's like, okay, I'm going to feed into this, and then these flowers are going to blossom. Mine is like all over the place. So it's like, but regardless, you know, hopefully it gets the same result.
Sure.
And yeah, like the other guys that I'm mentoring, I mean, they could turn into something, but yeah, that's not anything by design by any stretch.
Right. Yeah, you know, it's a lot of value. It's I've gone through networking events that kind of tried to set you up with a mentor-mentee relationship.
Really?
And, yeah. I never lasted in those because I think it's forced and weird.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's forced.
Like a business AA.
Is that what it was called? Are you kidding me?
No, but it should be.
Oh,
BAA and no.
Yeah, or like business BS.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. Anything else you think we should say on this topic before we close out on the big episode 06?
Yeah, no, it's great to be back. I'm sorry I missed last week's episode, but got the sneak peek and it was pretty awesome. So looking forward to the next one.
Oh, thank you. You were missed. Yeah, next week we talk to Nicole Rose and Mike Rose.
Excellent.
Yeah,
love those two.
Forward to it. Yeah, likewise. All right, my friend. As always, thank you for joining me on this climb, and I will see you and talk to you soon.
All righty.
All right. Thanks, bud.